Hey everyone, welcome to TechCrunch Live. I'm Matt Burns, and at TechCrunch Live, we help founders build better venture-backed businesses. Thanks for being here today. 2023 is becoming the year of artificial intelligence. It really feels like the technology is popping up everywhere. But in truth, companies have been using AI for years, like Sensi.AI. This company was founded in 2019 and uses artificial intelligence to help provide affordable quality care to those impacted by mental impairments, age, and other conditions. But the truth is, America's healthcare is broken, and it's just simply too expensive to provide care for everyone. So that's where they step in. It's a really fascinating use of artificial intelligence. Romi Gubes, the company's co-founder and CEO, is here to talk to TechCrunch's Kyle Wiggers about the advantages and challenges of using AI in healthcare. There's a lot of skepticism around AI, and in this particular case, how can you provide monitoring while respecting the patient's privacy? So we have a lot of questions. Sergey Gerbov from Flint Capital is here too. Sergey invested in Sensi.AI's seed round and Series A, and he has an amazing background as an investor. I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation. One quick announcement: TechCrunch is taking a virtual trip to Atlanta on June 7th. Kyle is involved in this too, and it's going to be a great series of events. We have an extra long episode planned for everyone, and it starts with the mayor. We have the mayor of Atlanta coming to talk about the different incentives and programs that the city is providing to retain and attract tech startups. So I really hope you can join that special TechCrunch Live episode. Once again, that's on June 7th. Okay, well, Kyle's going to conduct today's interview. And with that, I'm going to turn the show over to him. Kyle?
Thanks so much, Matt. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I think it'll be a lively and really interesting discussion. So it makes sense to me, at least, to start at the start. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the founding story of Sensi.AI, how it came to be, and how you two came together to make this idea into reality. So Romi, maybe you can kick us off and just tell us a little bit about the impetus for this and how it came together way back when in 2019, and all the steps along the way to today. Not to put too much pressure on you to summarize years of work in a few minutes, but if you could do your best, that'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I'll try to make a long story short, and thank you for having us. We're very excited to share our story with everyone on this call, and I hope you'll find it interesting. So as Matt and Kel, as you said, we are developing what we call the first of its kind virtual care agent. As most of you probably know, as time goes by, there are more and more older adults and less younger people that can potentially take care of them. And actually, we're in an inflection point in time where, if nothing will to happen, no one here on this call eventually will get the proper amount of care that they need in order to do like very simple activity of daily living tasks. As of today, actually, more than 80% already of the people don't get the sufficient amount of care that they need, which eventually results in higher risks, higher hospitalization rate, and faster decline. On top of that, 90% of the people prefer to age in place, which means that when there is no caregiver around, they're not on their own. They are usually on their own, and sometimes they're unable to complete certain activity of daily living, and also not able to always articulate their challenges and needs. So Sensi eventually was established with the goal of creating one source of truth for the aging population, and ultimately bridge this gap between supply and demand and make sure every stakeholder across the care continuum, if those can be caregivers, PTs, OTs, clinicians, insurers, and more, are getting holistic, unbiased data that will support their decision-making process. Today, we're working specifically with home care agencies across the country. They are serving older adults at home. Those agencies are utilizing the Sensi data in order to get better decisions and making sure the older adults stay at home for as long as possible while reducing hospitalization and ultimately preventing a transition to a facility. So just a bit of a background about myself. So I'm a software engineer by training. I'm not coming from this industry, but rather from tech companies. I worked at several Fortune 500 companies until today: Cisco, Dell, and Vonage. But actually, I always knew that I will establish my own company. It was a dream of mine. I just didn't know what will be the mission that I will wake up every morning to achieve. And then 4 years ago, I ran into an unfortunate experience with my daughter at daycare, which is, I'm always saying that kids are on the other side of the spectrum of people that are vulnerable, cannot speak for themselves, cannot come home and say what is the quality of care that is provided to them. Unfortunately, we discovered a really bad case of abuse in the daycare center. And this is one of the things in life that really changes your life. And this is where I decided that there is a huge need of bringing transparency into this world, and I want to leverage my technological background in order to help those vulnerable individuals to be safe in any kind of care environment. Very soon I understood how big the pain in the senior care industry is, and I decided to focus on this segment to start with. And making long story short, we're 4 years old. The company is 4 years old. We have, as of today, almost 70 employees across 2 different countries. One is Israel, where we have most of our R&D, product operations. And then we have our go-to-market teams here in the US. We raised $25 million. We are in 3 rounds, pre-seed, seed, and A. We are working in 37 states in the US with home care agencies serving thousands of individuals.
Yeah, that's great. And that's an impressive amount of money, I would say, to raise in that amount of time. That's a big tranche. And I'm hoping that, Sergey can speak to that a bit more, as an investor. So I would love to know, how you two met, way back when, years ago. And Sergey, what kind of drew you to this space? What made, what Sensi is doing really interesting to you, and why did you want to invest in the first place?
So I think we met in 8200 accelerator, but we looked at the space. We actually started to look at the space long before that. We started when we were discussing what would be the next interesting kind of sectors for investment will be in general with high potential. I think more than a year before we actually started to look at Sensi, we discussed what all the H-Tech related startups are really interesting, because it's an industry which really requires a lot of innovation from one side. From another side, it's an industry which is growing really fast. So we kind of started to look at this space. We took our time because frankly, we needed to learn about the space. And I think from the time we identified the H-Tech space till we did the first investment, which was Sensi.AI, it was probably a year to year and a half at least. So what we really liked in Sensi.AI, it's first it was a team, Romi and Nevo, a really great team, and we led the seed round. So at that point, basically, you have a team, you have idea, you have some vision. That's pretty much about it. So you know a lot of things are going to change. So at that point in time, basically, we really liked the team, we really liked the idea, because it was clear what, especially in the home care, you have a lot of shortage of personnel. So if you can help, if you can optimize, if you can make this person way more efficient with technology, you can do a lot of good things. So we kind of really liked the vision, and we said, okay, it's worth a shot. And we've been involved since then. We also invested at later rounds too, so very active with them.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really exciting space for sure. There's a lot of ventures here trying to achieve the same thing, actually. And I think, Romi, maybe you can speak to why you believe Sensi is differentiated. Maybe some of our audience is familiar with other remote patient monitoring solutions. There are too many names to list, but what is excuse me, I can't words today. What makes Sensi kind of unique in your mind? And how did you go about solving maybe some of the problems you saw with others in the space? who, maybe didn't quite achieve what you have achieved here with your company?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So first of all, the remote patient monitoring field is very wide, right? We have the PERS system, for example, personal emergency response systems that are part of this ecosystem. And then we have all kinds of other technologies that are mainly around specific clinical metrics, where Sensi's approach is providing a very holistic approach and a very holistic data in order to get all the stakeholders, as I said before, to get the data and to be based on this data in order to get to make decisions. So as of today, we are combining all kinds of detection aspects. For example, we know Sensi is able to detect today calls for helps and any kind of emergency, which is pretty exciting by doing nothing from the side of the older adult. We didn't take the approach of like wearing something or speaking to something or need to press on something. So it's very passive from the eyes of the older adult. And then also we're able to detect also like more like maybe softer things, such as, for example, any client caregiver match. So if there is a caregiver that is maybe not the good match for a specific older adult, we know to detect it in advance. And then by acting upon that, we're able to, potentially prevent things from happening in the future. So for example, we know to detect if a caregiver has a specific problem with transitioning the older adult from bed to the chair, where this is a huge risk factor for both of them, actually. So once we discover that, the agency can act upon that, replace the caregiver or retrain the caregiver, and then to reduce the risk. So we're providing a very holistic approach where we combine both the detection layer of emergencies, but then we're more focused on the prevention layer, the preventative layer, in order to really allow professionals to act before something is happening.
Right. It seems like, caregivers can glean a lot of insights from your platform. I'm sure, some of the audience are wondering, though, is this privacy preserving? Like, privacy is a thing that comes up in a lot of discussions around AI these days, whether it's generative or a solution like this. So maybe you can touch on that specifically and tell us how, you're taking steps to ensure that the personal data, information that might be used to identify a patient, for example, is kept secure and anonymized, if that is the case. I'm sure this is something that's top of mind for you, and probably something that customers ask about as well when they're considering implementing this themselves.
Yeah, of course. So it's a very long answer, but I'll try to keep it short. So first of all, when we first designed the system, we constantly thought what would be the right balance between privacy intrusion and enough data in order to really provide valuable insights. And of course, the more data you have, the more data types you have, the better you will become as a system. If we will have video as well, for example, we would have been able to detect even more things we are able to detect right now. But then because we're focusing on like very intimate environments, places as bathroom, bedroom, and the home as a whole, we decided not to go on cameras and videos, but rather go on audio that might be less intrusive in that manner. So this is one thing. And then on top of that, we are keeping the highest, the strictest level of security. We are HIPAA compliant, and we're making sure that our data is kept anonymized in two different VPCs. So we have the VPC that stores all the identified data, and then the VPC that stores the raw audio. Then if someone hacks the system, is not able to combine between the identity and the audio itself. In terms of the market, so we're looking at it from two different directions. One, which is the individuals at the end and their approach about having systems in place that will record them or video them or whatever. And this is where the balance come into play. So all of us use our smartphones, right? And we're doing it because it's convenient for us and we like it. But at the end of the day, they're listening to us and recording and analyzing everything we do, right? And when we're talking about life-saving systems, it's even more like for people that really needs this service, it's even more easy to get this decision. Like, I want to keep my mom longer at home. I want to keep her safe. I will do whatever it takes in order to keep her safe. But still, still like when we're trying to analyze how the market reacts to such a solution. So we see still like 5 to 7% of people that are declining the service out of privacy. So this is one thing we're seeing. Then on the other direction, so we're looking at it from the legal perspective, where in all regards to recording and everything. So the legal in the US, there are two different types of states that are all party consent and states that are one party consent. We are still encouraging all of our clients to make the system very noticeable and to talk about that and to explain what the system does. But then at the end of the day, even for states that are all party consent, once you inform everyone about the system and you put all the needed procedures in place, this becomes a non-issue from the legal perspective.
Right, that makes sense. So Sergey, I want to ask you, did a lot of these privacy considerations sort of stand out when you were considering investing in a company in this area? I think you kind of spoke to that earlier, but I would love if you could expand on that. And then, maybe a broader follow-up question is, is this something you're seeing other investors talk about as well, just this emphasis on privacy with respect to AI specifically? Because there is a lot of hype around AI nowadays, right? Like generative AI in healthcare for sure, AI in the enterprise. But as we see increasing legal challenges in some of those areas, investors that I've spoken with have expressed concern or wariness about pledging a substantial amount of money behind a startup that might find itself in a legal battle down the line. So, maybe you as an investor could talk about this issue and give us that side of things.
Sure. So one thing when we discussed investing in Sensi, we actually did a lot of calls with both existing kind of POCs we were running and potential clients, and we got feedback from different people who are running home care agencies, etc. I would say we probably did at least twice more calls than we usually do with customers, and that was one of the big questions actually. Would people use it? Would people have problem to use it because of the privacy concerns, etc.? Because you have in system like that, you have different sites which you also have to consider. You have the elder who is in his house, so you have to consider his privacy. You also have a caretaker, and one of the questions we asked if a caretaker would actually care about system listening to what we do there, etc., etc. So there is no like clear-cut solution here. Basically, it's kind of in a sense similar to when you look at security. In case of security, you have from one side you have security, from another side you have usability. The most secure computer is the one which is turned off and sit inside the safe, but it's not very useful. So kind of similar approaches here. If you want to provide real service, you kind of on one side you have some privacy concerns, on another side you have actually usefulness of this service, and giving what this particular service can actually save lives, can actually make life for these people way, way better. You need to make sure you give all the proper disclosures. You need to make sure what in terms of system design you have privacy in your mind. And one of the things Romi didn't say about herself, but both founders here spent some time in Israeli army, actually in cybersecurity units. So they actually do know a lot about security. So from architecture point of view, from the design, the system is way better protects the privacy than most of the systems at the stage when we looked at. So I think I think you need to make sure that everything is done properly, and you need to make sure that you comply with all the regulations. But I think ultimately the value which systems like that brings, are way overweight the privacy concerns. In general, in terms of AI, yeah, you need to make sure that the data you feed into the AI, and obviously most of the AI systems, we live on data, so you want to get as much data as possible. You need to make sure you kind of process your data beforehand. You make sure, like in case Romi mentioned, for example, we have voice data completely separated from the identifiable information. So the same thing you need to do for most of AI data. When you want to process, you're trying to kind of delete all the personal references, make sure what the data is properly fed into whatever neural net you're using or whatever. So yeah, you need to be extra careful not to leave identifiable information, not to take too much data into the system and kind of keep it. In many cases, people destroy the data after they train systems, etc., etc. But yeah, you need to basically at every step of the way, you need to be mindful of all the privacy and security concerns. That's for sure.
Right, I would agree. So not to harp too much on the technical aspect of Sensi, but I am curious what Sergey said just brought this to mind. Romi, do you think that since synthetic training data is maybe a solution to some of the privacy concerns that experts and others have expressed around AI training? And is synthetic data something that your company would consider using or has used in the past? I know there are mixed opinions on that, depending on the use case and application, but I would love your perspective, given that there are a lot of startups that are providing this as a service now and pitching it as sort of the end all be all for where it concerns privacy and AI.
Yeah. So it's something we considered, but then when starting in 2019, actually, we were very focused and prioritized collecting real data from the field. It wasn't easy at the beginning. And one thing we did it from the get-go is actually putting the devices in nursing homes and facilities in large scale in order to collect as many data as possible, as diverse as possible, and as fast as possible, because we couldn't find any other data set that can really, help us achieve high accuracy rate. So during the first year, this was our main focus, and we were able to collect enough data in order to train models that will be accurate enough for developing our MVP, our minimum viable product. And as of today, we don't need to use any other tactic in order to proceed. We have, as of today, more than 100 million of caregiving interaction in general, of tens of thousands of people across the country. So, and we're growing. So.
Right. That makes sense. That echoes what I've heard, and among AI startups in various industries, real data is usually preferable. But it depends on, again, the application. But it makes sense to train the AI on examples that might actually occur, or examples similar to what the system might see, so that detection rates hopefully are better. It's a more accurate product in the end. So I do want to touch on something that we didn't talk about during our prep call earlier this week, or a few weeks ago at this point. Anyway, the pandemic, hopefully there won't be another one, but I am curious as to how you navigated that, because your company was relatively new, and then the pandemic happened, and I'm sure it changed a lot of things regarding your go-to-market strategy, maybe even how you engage with customers, how you worked, for that matter. So can you talk about, Romi, how you had to adjust quickly, and maybe how the effects have stuck with you today, and how some of those practices have made your company better or more efficient? Would love to hear.
Yeah. So actually, we were fundraising just during the pandemic, both the pre-seed and the seed round. Like it was 5 months that we did those two rounds. And really, like the pandemic, I think, looking back, really supported us and accelerated both processes, both the fundraising and the market penetration from multiple reasons. One, I think that the pandemic made it very clear that the healthcare sector needs revolutionizing, approach, and we have to have more technologies and more solutions in order to bridge the gap between supply and demand in the healthcare ecosystem in general. And I think investors really like it was very evident in the fundraising aspect, and then also in the go-to-market approach. So whenever the pandemic hit, many caregivers weren't able to get to the homes of the older adults and really serve them, and older adults stayed at home by themselves. And this is where the need for solutions such as Sensi was very, very clear. And it really helped us, penetrate even faster than what we thought. On top of that, we're working with an industry that is very not tech savvy, to say the least. And before the pandemic, in terms of our sales cycle, we needed to go, one by one and sit with them in person and going through the demo and everything. And then the pandemic really accelerated their work remote with tools such as Zoom that for us, coming from the tech industry, it seems very obvious. But when you're working with low tech industries, it's not obvious at all. So we just, the pandemic, to sum it up, the pandemic really helped us accelerate processes on all fronts.
Right. I'm sure, the massive healthcare worker shortage that continues to this day is certainly driving business or interest in your business. But I did want to ask, maybe point blank, you're really not trying to replace workers, right? I think you mentioned that at the top, but this, it seems like an assistive solution, right? Rather than take any healthcare workers out of the loop. That seems to be sort of your philosophy, right? You're not trying to automate all aspects of monitoring. A healthcare worker might have, a number of beds to care for, right? And you're simply trying to make their job easier in a sense.
So yeah, to be very clear, I'm not a believer of like totally replacing caregivers. I think that it's not feasible in the near or long-term future. But I do think that we can make their work much more efficient and to get them to get decisions much better that will result, as I said in the beginning, in lower hospitalization and keeping them longer at home, but definitely not replacing them.
Right. So this is a question for both of you. I want to look to the future a little bit. Of course, it's hard to predict anything, especially in this space, given how fast it's moving. But how do you see the Sensi platform evolving down the line? You talked about, Romi, other places where it might be applicable, where it makes sense. Of course, you're focusing on one, kind of customer right now. But where do you hope to take this? And, Sergey, maybe you can speak to the same thing, where you hope to see it in the future. And, I think it's also important to talk about the limitations and challenges that might crop up too. Obviously, technology is hard. And AI especially doesn't always behave like we expect. And there are, roadblocks that might be encountered. So, if you could have an honest discussion about what might take a while to fix, I think that might be useful to our audience, and they probably really want to hear about that. Maybe starting with Romi.
Yeah. So as I said in the beginning, we're just starting from leveraging the data in the home care industry. But at the end of the day, and we started out by just having audio as our data, our main data type. But as time goes by, we are looking into getting more and more data types, such as movement detection, and even like integrating into all kinds of wearables and other technologies that are in the home in order to make the home the best and most safe surrounding for the older adult. And then in terms of the different stakeholders that are using the system, so we're very focusing, although we started this journey from our experience in the childcare center, we decided to focus in Sensi in aging and being the one source of truth for the aging population, just because this space is very has a lot of challenges, and the data that we collect has a lot to solve at the end of the day. So we're very focused on the aging population, but we will want to leverage the data to many more stakeholders, and we want to have Sensi to become the one source of truth for everyone. That even once the older adult will go to their clinician or will interact with a PT or an OT, they will be able to open the Sensi dashboard, go over the data, and really know what's going on with this older adult without just asking them multiple questions or trying to speak to their caregivers or their family members or whoever.
All right.
Yeah, and I can add, we love this vision, and that's the vision we invested. I think the sector for home care, it's a huge sector. There are more and more people who will require some help at home when they age, and just this particular segment is huge enough to go after. That being said, the technology is really interesting, and I think if we fast forward many years from now, we're all gonna have all kind of helpers, all kind of technology, obviously with AI, which help us to do a lot of stuff way more efficient and way better. So I do see what the same technology can be used across different segments. When it will happen, the time will tell. But we think the home care, the age tech segment is just the first one, and it's probably the most painful one, where you really need this help as soon as possible. So right now, let's focus.
Right, makes sense. Could I, Romi, get you to speak more to the challenges that you see in the near and far future? You did mention some, I think, but again, I think our audience, they appreciate the candidness, right? Like what you see as, and it could be not only technological in nature, maybe challenges on the business side as well. Obviously, it's a tough funding environment right now, and there are concerns about the economy, which might be short-lived, might not be. So yeah, I mean, and you can even put that in the form of advice if you'd like that answer. Like, what advice would you give to founders, not just in the AI space, maybe in general, where it concerns challenges around fundraising? Then again, if any technical challenges with regard to Sensi come to mind, would love to hear about those as well.
Yeah. So in terms of fundraising, I think it's very obvious, right? It's a very, as you said, like tough fundraising environment at the moment. Fortunately enough, we have great investors that are backing us up and are here for us. And we actually are not fundraising at the moment and are not looking to fundraise in the near future. So this is something like I'm heads down right now, building the business, growing and making sure that we're keeping this huge advantage that we have, that is like being first to market and creating this huge category. So this is our main effort at the moment. It's not easy at all. And if you want me to speak about challenges, so I can speak about like how you really create a new category, which is a very challenging task that we took on ourselves. We are, as I said, working in a very low touch, in a very low tech environment. And we're putting a lot of effort with accelerating, adoption and helping them really integrate the Sensi solution into their day-to-day and really transforming this industry. This is one challenge we're facing at the moment. And then on top of that, I think that once the economy changed, focus areas, like the main focus areas of tech companies really shifted from growth mindset, right? Like growth above all, to also growing an efficient business. And I think that for us, it was very clear that we need to take immediate steps in order to become as efficient as possible with our models and with our design in general of the system. And this is something we also put focus on in 2023. And I guess that 2024 will remain the same in that manner. So we're trying to, become as efficient in terms of the data flow and in terms of the analysis, the way we analyze the data. So this is another thing we're facing at the moment. And I think that in terms of advice, so I think that 2021 was misleading, I guess, to all entrepreneurs that this is their first time, mainly the ones that this is their first time, and some of us might grew businesses not in the right way, not in a healthy way, not looking at efficiency, not looking about growth in terms of like real revenue and how much we were able to penetrate the market. And I think that entrepreneurs need to be very honest and very to put a lot of effort and to put their mindset into building healthy businesses, not only because the economy changed, because this is how billion-dollar companies are being built.
Right, great answer. And that just about does it for us. I think we're out of time. So I want to say once again, thank you for joining us, Romi and Sergey, for this wide-ranging discussion. It was really enlightening to me and hopefully to our audience. But we're not quite done. For those listening, those tuning in, stick around for pitch practice with Matt. I'm going to throw it back to him. Once again, though, thanks for joining us all, and thanks to Romi and Sergey for making time out of your day to speak to this.
Well, thanks for that, Kyle. I really appreciate it. I guess my only remaining question is, can I use your platform to monitor my kids, because I don't trust them all the time?
For sure.
I don't care about their privacy at all.
We can try that.
Actually, I do care about their privacy a lot. So thank you for doing that, but we're not done. So we have 3 companies ready to present to us, and this is pitch practice. So there's no winners, there's no losers. We're just getting feedback. They're going to have 2 minutes to present their companies without a slide deck. And then we're going to give 4 minutes of feedback. And the feedback could be on their pitch style, the company itself, or whatever it may be. The first person is John. John is coming to us from Classify. And Classify's URL is useclassify.com. That's a good hack there. Use the startup name.com. I like that one. John, are you there?
I am.
Well, nice to meet you, sir. You have 2 minutes to present your startup. You can start now.
Great. I'm going to tell everybody a little story about Sandra. Sandra is an actual customer of ours. She's the founder of a go-to-market agency with 10 full-time employees, 15 freelancers, and 20 clients. Her client communications are in Gmail. Her internal work is done in Google Docs, Notion, Figma, Trello, HubSpot, and Slack. She spends 50% of her week in meetings. She's always scrambling to find the context files, links she needs to be prepared for her work. The information fire hose is anxiety-provoking for Sandra and her team. For $10 a month, Sandra now has an always-on co-pilot whose sole purpose in life is to make sure that she doesn't miss anything important. This co-pilot makes sure that Sandra always has all of her information at her fingertips, organizing according to who's on her calendar and the topics of her meetings. She can see all the activity in all of her SaaS applications in one beautifully designed agenda. In the unlikely event that Sandra has not surfaced all of her information for her, Sandra can search in one place across all her connected applications. She doesn't need to change her behavior. Classifies everywhere in her browser, her phone, her native calendar application, even in her Zoom meeting windows. Sandra has no idea how to format her data and prompt the things that she needs, keeps seeing in the media. She doesn't know what a large language model is or how it can help her. Her copywriters are starting to use ChatGPT. Sandra's sidekick learns what's most important to her the more Sandra interacts with it. Sandra now gets insights from her meeting notes, summaries of comments in her SaaS applications, all in one place. No context switching, no anxiety, a feeling of control. Sandra now spends more time with her customers and her kids and less time organizing her information. She has humane technology. The end.
I've never had anybody end a pitch with the end. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just telling you, I've never heard that.
You'll tell me. I'm a big believer in storytelling.
Yeah, no, very, very nice. Sergey, let's start with you.
So I love this story. I think it's really good to have the story, but what I would suggest to do, just to have part of your pitch the story, because obviously since you already have at least one customer, you probably have several customers, you're probably running for some time. So In this case, if you have some traction, I would certainly add it to the pitch because traction speaks for itself, especially if you have numbers, how many customers you have, how long they're using the system, things like retention, stuff like that. That's certainly gets a lot of attention. With solutions like that, one of the questions I would also have: how hard is it to implement? So I would probably put somewhere explanation what it's. I would guess it's easy integration with all the tools you have, but you need to kind of mention it somewhere because a lot of solutions where you kind of have every systems integrated just require a lot of integration, a lot of complexities, and what creates too much friction. So that also something worth mentioning in your pitch.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I agree with the traction stuff. You can definitely weave that into the conversation quite a lot, and that's
question for you. Can I ask a couple questions about the feedback?
Quickly, yes.
You gave me 2 minutes. Like if I were going to give you an investor pitch, I would put all that stuff in there. But like to give somebody for 2 minutes, how would you weave that in and be impactful so somebody understands who you're solving the problem for, what problem you're solving, and what the product does in 2 minutes or less?
Yeah, it's tough, right? And there's always gonna be follow-up questions. So that's what you need to leave room for too. Romi, do you have any questions or feedback?
I think it's a very interesting story, and I really like the way you told this story. I was just like, I tried to imagine how the system looks like and what is the real product. And I know, as you said, like it's really hard in 2 minutes to go over everything A to Z. But maybe just, I don't know, like maybe like a short explanation on how it looks will be very interesting. Not the look itself, but how it behaves. And then a bit about like 2 or 3 sentences about your go-to-market approach, like what kind of businesses are you tackling, and what is the business model in general? Even if it's not yet figured out, totally. I would like to hear your thoughts about that, like how you think about that.
So it sounds like the story didn't do its job by explaining like what Sandra does, that she runs a small marketing firm, that she's paying $10 a month for the product. So that's really helpful feedback.
Yeah, I would go ahead, sir.
So one maybe small comments here on comment on like 2 minutes or whatever. Think about it as kind of Olympic system. So what you want to get out of 2 minute speech or 30-second speech or whatever is to get to the next stage. You either get to the next stage and you're able to talk more, or you kind of drop out. Yeah. So you need to put enough of hooks which will generate interest. So like traction certainly generate interest, kind of story generates interest because it's kind of visual. So anything like that would generate enough of interest, and then person will want to tell me more.
Learn more.
And
for
get to the next stage.
Yeah, super helpful. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much, John. And sorry about last week. We tried to get you on and didn't work out. So I'm glad you're here this week.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks so much, sir. Talk to you next time. Okay, next we have Michael. Michael is coming to us from ShiftMD. Michael, you there?
Y'all see me?
Yeah, well, there you are, sir. Hello.
How are you?
All right, well, you have 2 minutes, and let's start that timer now.
So my name is Michael Padilla. I am the CEO, co-founder of ShiftMD. ShiftMD is a mobile-based proprietary platform, an app, that is exclusive to women's healthcare practitioners, OBs, GYNs, nurse practitioners, PAs, reproductive endocrinologists, that ultimately is going to help them save time, make money, and improve patient outcomes. So once a healthcare practitioner, these healthcare practitioners download our app, they enter in their license information, we verify who they are, they gain full access to a curated marketplace of non-prescription, best-in-class products that they can easily learn about on the app. For instance, we have conditions trying to conceive, pre and postnatal care, sexual wellness, vaginal care, UTI, pelvic health, menopause, and so forth. They go through the conditions, find and learn about the different products. They can put them on their favorites, and then they can easily recommend those products to their patients via simple text message. Patient gets the text, there's a link on it, there's also a phone number for our customer service, and that's it really from the physician standpoint. They've recommended the product, they've established the duration of therapy, and now it's up to the patient to press the link, check and see if the product is actually great. If the pricing is better than they can find on their own, like the doctor promised, and it is, and hopefully that conversion is made. And that's when our sales model kicks in. The provider gets 30%, we get 30%, and the brand manager gets the brand partner gets the 40%. So we're just in Miami right now. We have about 200 practitioners that have downloaded and utilized the app on a more or less regular basis. Last year, we hit $1.2 million in sales. Really wasn't our focus, is make sure all these moving pieces were functioning properly. And now we're just looking to scale by rolling out a national sales force.
All right, Michael. Well, thanks so much for that. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Your passion here is evident. You clearly know what you're talking about. Romi, let's go to you. Any feedback?
Yeah. So first of all, I really like the way you told the flow that you decided to go through. It was very clear to me. It made a lot of sense. It was very straightforward in a way. It's also very interesting to see that you were able to crack the code in Florida specifically and have many users for the system and also like gain a lot of traction from it. I think like in terms of 2-minute speech, it's the best I could have expect. So
thank you. It's crazy though. I agree with John. This is nuts to do everything in 2 minutes.
It is. I know. But I gotta make it. I gotta make it entertaining somehow.
Yeah. It's making us. Yeah, it's rough.
Sergey, any feedback? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just to say that my follow-up question would be like, what did you do that good in Florida that you're going to replicate in other states? And if you have any thoughts on that, like what will be the next states and why?
Yeah, so I still think that folks will be skeptical about us being in our backyard and how we've onboarded our providers. We're starting to speak to interesting partners, folks that align with what we want to do. IVF networks, nurse practitioners, PAs. This morning, I absolutely was shocked to see that there's a network of close to 5,000 PAs, physician assistants, that would be really right up their alley. And that is that the ability to find the product that makes sense for their products. We make sure that from the vendor partners that the pricing is better from the doctor, the nurse practitioner, than the patient can get on their own, and that these are best in class, right? So finally putting together a curated marketplace is really now, because we're sticking our heads up and kind of figuring out what to do and how to get funding, especially in this environment, is we're finding that there's a lot of strategic partners that we might be able to help us onboard some providers without having to necessarily roll out a huge sales force and the costs involved in that.
Yeah, good answer. Sergey?
Great market. We actually invest, we were the first money in Flow Health, which is #1 app for women's health in the world, actually. So it's a great market. I love the pitch. I think you put it great, and I really love what you put at the end with traction, because I was kind of the next question. I had a bunch of questions. Okay, how do you bring doctors into the mix? Are they willing to use it, et cetera, et cetera? But then I hear what you already have pretty significant traction. I say, okay, somehow you guys figured it out. So I would still have these questions, but I will actually ask them. If I can talk after. If I would feel there's no traction, I would say, okay, there are too many questions here, and it's kind of. So the questions I would ask, how do you actually bring doctors? Because we have really small attention span, we're overwhelmed with all kind of information. And our interesting question, in case, as I understand what you're offering on this marketplace, it's mostly like non-traditional kind of remedies and stuff like that. And usually doctors are not willing that much to go this route. So how do you actually convince them to offer this things like that? But yeah. I think the pitch is good. Probably also the next, I would probably add somewhere like the big vision, like, okay, we right now we are in Florida and we plan to go for like national rollout within X months or whatever, and they're going things like that. But I like the pitch.
I thank you. I think that 30 years in pharmaceutical experience now with really no access to the healthcare providers, to your point, we want to utilize a sales team that already has those relationships in place, utilize them to onboard practitioners, and then really realistically be able to take care of, in a practice, there's 10 different providers doing all different things. From the inside, individually take care of them. We have 106 products on the platform currently. It really is to match them with 10 products that they're going to passionately recommend. Let them know, direct them with the manufacturer if there's samples, if there's products that they can feel, touch, we'll get that to them. But really establish the relationship with the practitioner, much like we did many, many, many years ago, but also utilizing our killer tech. I didn't get a chance to talk about our team. It's awesome, right? I'm the pharma guy. My partner is the technology, and then we have our COO that kind of keeps us both in check. And I think we've done a whole heck of a lot with a couple of bucks. So we're ready. We're ready to kind of come out, so to speak.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Man.
Yeah, keep in touch, and I hope you join us next time.
Be well.
All right. Well, we have one more, and this one's totally different than the first two. So we're gonna bring on Razan. Razan, are you there?
How do I get out?
Oh, there you go. Razan, if you can turn on your camera and your mic. And Michael, I think you just leave, or Dennis will kick you out.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Hi there. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yes. Well, we'd love to hear the pitch. You have 2 minutes, and let's start now.
Yep, sure. So basically, my name is Rosen Kolev, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Smart Farm Robotics. What do? We're hoping to tackle one of the oldest problems of agriculture, getting rid of weeds. Currently, farmers, they do it by spraying tons of herbicides, tilling with machines, and lots of manual labor. Our solution, a fully autonomous weeding robot. You might have heard already about other startups in the field, like Carbon Robotics, FarmWise, Verdant, etc. How are we different and better? What do? Our robot is fully solar-powered for a 24/7 working cycle, so no cost for gasoline, no exhaust, unlike all the mentioned competitors. It's a light-weighted, four-wheeled rover, less than 200 pounds, not compacting the soil and easy to move around different plots. We use exclusively AI image recognition to spot the weeds and to navigate in the field, saving clients money on costly RTK, GPS precision antennas, etc. That also allows us to address different markets, those of perennial plants. Our competitors focus exclusively on annual plants, think about vegetables, where the precision equipment makes sense, but it's useless if you have vegetative plants growth every year. Think about all the lavender rows. Now, finally, our weeding implements are also aimed to work in hard, sandy soils and arid conditions, unlike some competitors who use soil cutting knives. And we also avoid the fire hazard present at others who use lasers for burning the weeds. Our first target market are organic growers of herbal and aromatic plants. Why? They have some very acute need for affordable weed control and are a neglected high potential niche group. They make more than 30K revenue per acre annually. Finally, we have built our robot to address their very specific needs. I myself started as a side hustle in organic essential farming a few years ago, so I know what I'm talking about. We plan to offer our product first as a rental service, lowering the cash out for farmers and speeding market penetration. And also then we're going to start unit sales and data analytics, making use of all the data we gather. We already built 2 prototypes and are finalizing now our MVP, and paid pilots should start next spring. We already got 250K national grant and 100K in private investment. Thank you for your time.
You rolled right through that. I loved it. You made good use of the 2 minutes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but I fully agree with the comments of the other two.
You know, I've heard that from a lot of people over the last year. And as you're talking, I'm talking to my staff, and we're going to rework this thing. And I think this.
No, but every single VC I've talked to, they said, sorry, 2 minutes. do your job. So,
right.
you're not
That's,
exception.
that's the problem. Even if you have half an hour, actually, I've seen research what unless you get attention of people, and it doesn't really matter, investors or your customers or whoever,
Definitely.
within first couple minutes, you kind of lost there.
That's
so
although visuals would help a lot. I don't have that here, but
I think with your company particularly, visuals would help because you could show your robot, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. I mean, I got videos, I got pictures, but
Sergey,
I
gotta.
it.
I'm going to hijack this. Sergey, do you need to see pictures as an investor? You're a very experienced investor. Do you need to see that?
So it depends. For the first pitch, probably you don't have to. I mean, it depends how much time you have. I would say for 2 minutes pitch, pictures are not actually useful, because you're gonna either flip through, either you're gonna show one picture for the whole 2 minutes or two, or you're gonna flip for everything, so you wouldn't remember what was there. So I think it depends on the setup. If we're talking about 5 minutes or more, pictures will certainly help. Pictures, numbers, and stuff like that. But for 2 minutes, I would say just a pitch. No
how long does it generally take you to get a good vibe?
It depends. It really depends, because there are some segments where you kind of know the segment well enough. So within, I would guess what within a couple minutes you actually have a good feeling inside. If it's something, let's put it this way: if it's in the space you understand, a couple minutes is enough to get kind of a feeling. If it's something where you don't have expertise, that's going to take longer. In many cases, never, because you're just kind of trying to learn things. I often listen to some startups which are doing something incredibly interesting, and I know in advance what most of the chances I just don't have enough of the knowledge to understand it fully. So sometimes you kind of take your time, you learn about things, and you get there. But in many cases, it's just way too complicated to learn in reasonable time.
Well, I appreciate that. Let's get back to this. Let's get back to Rozen's startup here. Any feedback for him?
So I like to pitch. I think I got full disclosure. We haven't done any robotics. I don't have any expertise in it, besides just being kind of interesting to learn stuff. So it gave a good picture. I think I would have a lot of questions on probably worthwhile. You talked about competition, but it's probably worthwhile to give some kind of feeling in terms of like economics. Is your robot is more expensive? The value is it like way cheaper than manual labor, or it's way more efficient than manual labor than what people are doing now? So kind of give kind of clear indication of how much value you bring into a table, especially given what I would guess it's not a cheap robot. So even if I'm farmer and I'm renting this out, still it's not going to be probably cheap for me. And another thing is also kind of, especially when it talked about like laser and other stuff, it can work 24/7, but the question is how much kind of area you can cover. Do I need like many of these robots, or one robot for would do work for like 10 people or whatever? So like these type of things, it would clear it a little bit more.
Good, that's great. Romi, any feedback?
First of all, I highly agree with Sergey, and I think that you were extremely passionate and clear, and it was very smooth, and it was easy even for me that I'm not coming from this industry to understand the challenge and the solution, which means a lot. But just an advice from someone that is there, sometimes speaking to investors that are not coming from the industry that we serve. At the beginning, I was taking into like, I thought that everyone are aware to the huge challenges that the older adult industry has and how painful it is and how fast growing is this industry and everything. And it was very soon I understood that it's not that straightforward, and I need to focus my efforts at the beginning to really go over like educating them a little bit about the industry and why we're seeing huge potential in this industry, because we didn't go mainly to investors that there are not many investors that are focused on this specific industry. And I guess that it's your case as well. And you're going to a more diverse, industry agnostic investors. So if this is the case, so like put some time into like explaining a little bit deeper about the industry.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Actually, in our case, it's even worse in a way, because whenever investors... Yeah, why? It's a very simple reason. Whenever investors hear hardware, they say, wow, that's too much. I mean, I'd rather invest in some funky app that's going to make billions in a couple of months than invest in hardware that can break down, needs manufacturing, whatever. No, thank you. That's one thing. And second, agriculture is specific. I mean, you got VCs who specialize in agriculture, yes, and that's what we're trying to talk to, because the general public, of course, it's too technical. I fully agree, and you cannot educate someone for 2 minutes. Not even 20 minutes is enough, even if they're really smart. So yeah, but very good comment. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, thanks so much for joining and applying. I really do appreciate it. And Romi and Sergey, thank you so much for joining us today. And this wraps up this episode of TechCrunch Live. I really appreciate everyone joining and staying to the end. And until next week, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.